Welcome back to Mr. Bear Likes to Watch. Going to talk about In a Violent Nature, directed by Chris Nash today. Today is Sunday, and I saw this movie on Thursday. And generally, I like to try and record as fresh out of the theater as I can. But I just had some thoughts and feelings to sort out on this one, so I wanted to give myself a little bit of time to do that. So that's exactly what I did. The very simple setup and premise of this is when a locket is removed from a burial site, Johnny, our killer, is resurrected to continue this quest for revenge and go on a killing spree. And that sounds good to me, man. That is exactly my kind of thing. I'm a big horror movie fan. Slashers are my favorite subgenre in horror. And for something like this, that's honestly all the setup I need for the most part. This movie does something interesting in that you follow the killer for the majority of this. The camera's a few feet behind him, and you follow him as he walks, and sometimes walks and walks and walks through rural areas and the woods and things like that until he comes across victims and then stalks and kills them. And honestly, this stylistic choice in following the killer really, really worked well for me. While at times I think it does create some pacing issues, I honestly never found this boring or uninvolving or unexciting. When I left the theater that day, I overheard groups of people discussing this movie. Some were saying this was absolutely amazing. Heard other people saying this was the most boring thing they had ever seen in their entire life. And I don't really fit into either of those camps. This is not a movie that I loved or hated. I think ultimately I was just a bit disappointed by. One of my biggest gripes here is the terrible acting and terrible dialogue. I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan. It's a nostalgic comfort series for me. I throw them on often when I'm just doing like chores and things around my apartment as like background noise. I just love the nostalgic vibes that it gives off, and there's just always something, like I said, very comforting about having something like that on. And those movies are chock full of fucking terrible dialogue, awful characters, terrible acting. But those movies are fun. I didn't find In a Violent Nature to be fun. I think it takes itself very seriously, and that's okay. I'm absolutely okay with a film taking itself seriously. But in my opinion, if you're going to do that, the terrible acting and terrible dialogue just is nothing but a disservice and takes away from that feeling of it being more serious or scary or dreadful. And it just really took me out of it sometimes here. You don't spend a ton of time with the group of victims here. You do get a little bit of time with them, not from the POV of the killer. And then what I thought worked actually even better was when you see them at a distance, when you are with him, and you're catching like small snippets of them talking and seeing them kind of go about what they're doing. And I thought those moments actually created some genuine tension, more tension than you might suspect from watching something from this kind of perspective. But the characters here are absolutely not memorable, not engaging, pretty bland, just people lined up waiting to be slaughtered, basically. And again, to me, often that really is not a problem unless, like this film is, it's just trying to take it a bit too seriously. My other biggest problem with this movie is that fucking ending. Bitch, what in the fuck? Like, it's not that it's an ending that, like, I didn't understand or whatever. I just didn't understand why they chose to end it this way. I'm not going to discuss it. There are no spoilers here. But this was a limp, lame, bland head scratcher of an ending. And I just could not wrap my head around why in the fuck this was how they wanted to go out with this movie. And it doesn't, to me, it doesn't detract from the entire experience. It's really like basically about like the last 10 minutes of the movie that I'm talking about. But damn, it just was an absolute fail for me in every single way. And I just wish they had thought that through a little bit better, because I'm not really sure what they were trying to say with this ending, because it just fell so incredibly flat for me. There is a lot to like here, though. I thought the look of Johnny, our killer, both in and out of the mask, was great. I mean, potential even for a slasher icon on our hands, even if it's just a minor one, depending on if they decide to make another film in this franchise, or make it a franchise, make another film, make a sequel, whatever it may be. So I think there's definitely a lot of potential there. There are some gnarly and awesome kills here, 2 in particular that just stand out head and shoulders above everything else. And most of these kills appear to have been done practically. There are a couple of distracting digital effects through this movie, but most of it, like I said, appears to have been done practically. And that worked so well for me, because I love the look of this movie. It's shot in 4:3 aspect ratio on clearly not high-end equipment. So it's very grainy. It just immediately hit that like nostalgic look and feel of so many movies that I loved and that I grew up with. And it was one of the like standout things for me. There are parts and night sequences where you kind of almost sometimes don't really know exactly what's going on, because it's just so grainy and like low quality. But again, it worked so well for me, and I absolutely love the look of this film and the feel of it. It just hit me right in that feel-good nostalgia zone. This is a type of film that I have so much respect for, because they are taking a lot of big swings. While there's nothing here that's super groundbreaking, it is not something that you see very often. And I think going for a deliberately slow pace and making some choices that go so against the grain of a lot of modern filmmaking is to be applauded. And I think this is absolutely worth a watch. While I didn't love it and I did not hate it, I have a lot of respect for it. And if you're a horror fan, and especially a slasher fan, I think you owe it to yourself to definitely check this out. I wouldn't exactly say that it's something you have to rush to the theater to go and see, but it is coming to Shudder, I imagine, probably within at least a couple months. And I think it's worthy of your time. It's going to be incredibly divisive. Like I said, as I left the theater, I heard opinions on both sides just from overhearing people talking. So it's not going to be a crowd pleaser, not by any means, but it's going to really work for some people. And a lot of it did work for me, but the things that didn't work really took it down a couple notches for me. But even with that said, I would absolutely love to see a sequel to this. I would love to see what they could do next. It's incredibly simple. There's not a huge story to follow, or anything like that. But with the creativity that I saw in this, I just think there is a lot of potential for a sequel that outdoes this in every single way. I have no idea what the budget for this was, but it appears it's going to be at least somewhat successful. There's a lot of buzz, a lot of word of mouth, and a lot of people talking about this right now. And I think especially with it coming to Shudder, it's going to have a lot of eyes on it, and it's going to gain a following of some sort for sure. How big that following is yet to be seen. But this is something that's absolutely going to have its fans, and probably really big fans. So those are my thoughts on In a Violent Nature, guys. I appreciate people taking chances in filmmaking and doing something that goes a bit against the grain and is a little bit different. That's what keeps me so in love with film and movie going and this art as a whole. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel, or if you're here for the first time, welcome. And I appreciate you listening to me ramble on and on about this stuff, and I will catch you all very soon on my next video.